If you're planning to read a Russian novel, just know what you're getting yourself into. I finished The Brothers Karamazov yesterday, and I definitely did not know what I was getting myself into when I started it. This is the only time that I will try to pronounce the author's name, so let's just hope that it goes well. So The Brothers K by Fyodor Dostoevsky is a very lengthy Russian novel that is... The synopsis says that it is a murder mystery. There is very little murder mystery for this book. It is comprised of 12 different books, it's sectioned into 12 different books, plus an epilogue that are all extremely lengthy, and we don't even get to the murder until like the 9th or 10th book. So if you're expecting murder and then the rest of it to be the mystery of solving it, that's not what this book is. The Brothers K, as it is affectionately called, follows the Karamazov family. So you have the father, Fyodor, and then you have the three brothers, Dmitri, or as he is called, Misha, Ivan, who doesn't get a nickname, and then Alexei, also called Alyosha. He is most often referred to as Alyosha. Now, I listened to this entire thing on audiobook. I had nothing in front of me, no visuals to like put the brothers' names with who they are. It's a terrible way of explaining that, but I'm bad with names in general. And so just listening to this, I was very confused for the first part of book one. And that is because I don't remember it ever being said that these nicknames went with these brothers. So you're introduced to them all. First of all, okay. First of all, it starts like a Victorian novel where you get all of the backstory for way too long. It sounds like I hated this book. I didn't. I really enjoyed it, but I'm just giving you all of the details. So it opens and you hear about Fyodor Pavlovich and his life, the life that he has led and whatever, and then his children. These are his children with this wife and then with this wife and whatever. And you hear all about them and how they were raised and how they were not raised by him and they ended up living somewhere else and yada yada. You get all of their backstory, which is important, but also probably could have been cut down. Like, that is so lengthy and I don't really feel like it needed to be. But you're also introduced to them with their full Christian names. So then later on in that like first book, when they start referring to them, or when Dostoevsky starts referring to them by their nicknames, I was so confused. Because also, they're not nicknames that I'm familiar with. I don't speak Russian. I don't know very many Russians with Russian names, so I'm just not familiar with the common nicknames. I'm sure that Misha is a very common nickname for Dmitri, but I'm not familiar with that. I didn't know that. I also didn't know that Alyosha and Alexei were the same person for the first part of the book. So there's this one scene in particular that I feel like was probably so important, and I was so lost the entire time, where you have Fyodor Pavlovich, if I could say his name. You have Fyodor Pavlovich, oh no. Okay, you have Fyodor Pavlovich, the father, meeting with the sons. He's supposed to meet with all three of them, and then also a like religious father, like a monk. But one of the sons is missing. And I just didn't know for the longest time that there were only like 4 people present. I thought we had at least 2 extra people. I was so very confused. And then I was very confused about who was showing up also because I didn't realize that that was the son, whatever. The names were very confusing for a little while, especially just listening to it. I was so confused. So be aware that, like, maybe look up the cast beforehand or just be aware of the nicknames because the nicknames get used more often than the actual names. And until you put those together, it's confusing. And maybe that's a me problem. Maybe that's because I was just listening to the audiobook. I don't know. But I definitely had some struggles in the beginning. But once I got their names settled in my mind and figured out that Dmitri and Misha are the same person and that Alexei and Alyosha are the same person, things went a lot easier and I had a much better time understanding the story and I had a much more fun time reading it. It is still very, very long, and for the majority of it, you are just following the characters around. Mainly Alyosha. He kind of feels like the main character for some reason, which is a little bit odd, but I think he very much is the main character. But we also go back and forth between him and Ivan, and him and Dmitri, and him and Fyodor Pavlovich, and whatever. You get everybody's perspective. And that was another thing that was kind of strange, is that it feels very like chronological and literally day by day for so long. Like if I'm remembering correctly, 10 of the books happen over the span of a week, maybe. Maybe there was like a little bit of a time jump towards the beginning, but then the majority of the book happens over the course of just a couple days. And you're just going back and forth between perspectives, seeing like, this is what Alyosha's day was like. Okay, now let's switch to Yvonne. This is what Yvonne's day was like, which is fine. I don't mind that. But it just was so rapid, kind of like, or you're just sitting with these characters in these 2 or 3 days for so very long that then at the end, there's this time jump where I thought it was like 2 days later, maybe, after this big event had happened, after the actual murder finally took place. And I'm like, okay, we're following this character. Does this character even know that this other person was murdered? Is he aware? And so I was just like concerned, like, okay, when is he gonna find out? And then we find out that it's been like 4 weeks, or I can't remember if it was 4 weeks or 4 months. I think it was 4 months. But then as I was listening towards the end, it seemed like maybe it wasn't so long. But the point is, there is a big time jump. So we've been like stuck in these 3 days, and then all of a sudden, Dostoevsky is like, oh, and by the way, months have passed. And it was just so jarring. That was crazy to me. So not necessarily like a problem, but just very jarring to me. I feel like I'm blending in with my books a little bit. Maybe this was the wrong thing to wear. But anyway, all of that being said, I did still really enjoy the story. Like I said, you're following this father and his 3 sons, and they are such messed up characters. Like everybody has issues. Everybody is so immoral, except for Alyosha. Alyosha is an angel. We love him. He's great. He's everybody's favorite. But everybody else, they have such huge problems, and yet they're very likable. Like Misha's not my favorite. Misha's kind of an idiot, but also he's kind of lovable somehow. Yvonne, I really liked Yvonne. I thought that maybe, well, I can't say that, it's gonna give something away, but anyway, I really liked Yvonne. He definitely talks too much. Like, there were portions of the book that were so unnecessary because it was just Yvonne telling this really long story or going on this really long rant. And I was like, okay, buddy, this has nothing to do with the actual story. Can we just shorten it a little bit? So he does talk too much, but I also really liked Yvonne. Nobody likes Fyodor Pavlovich. Yeah, I don't think he's meant to be likable anyway. So nobody likes him. The ending was interesting. So the entire 12th book is the trial. So it's very long. You get to hear like the defense and the prosecutor's full speeches. Well, no, we hear the prosecutor's full speech. We do not hear the defense's full speech, but you hear all the witnesses and all the things that are said, and it's very long. So if you really like a trial scene, like a courtroom scene, book 12 is going to be your favorite thing ever. It's going to be your jam. It's great. And I really don't even know who the murderer was, because I don't know if I can trust the narrator. If we can trust the narrator, then you do find out who the murderer was. But I kind of get the feeling our narrator is unreliable, and so the mystery is sort of solved, but sort of not really, in my opinion. For me, I'm still not quite sold on who the murderer was. Well, I guess not really. Okay, what we're told by the narrator does make sense, but man, that court scene, we get the prosecutor's whole entire speech first, and listening to him, I was like, oh, you know, you're right. I agree with you now. Like, forget what I thought earlier. I agree with you. And then we get the defense attorney's whole entire speech, and I was like, you know, you also make a lot of sense. So that was just really well done, in my opinion, because you start doubting yourself, you start doubting the narrator, you start doubting whoever your pick was. You're not really sure anymore because the speeches are so convincing, and the evidence, all of it mostly circumstantial, but the evidence all becomes very convincing, I guess. Another thing to be aware of if you're going to read Dostoevsky, because I don't think this is just in the Brothers Karamazov, I think in most of his books, there's also a heavy religious aspect to it. So it is very heavy on theology, which is great, except I definitely got lost sometimes. And that's one of the things that stretches the book so much. We get just speeches and rants and monologues and discussions for pages and pages and chapters and chapters and chapters. That is just theology. It's just the characters discussing theology. So sometimes very interesting, and I really loved hearing that. Sometimes it went on a little too long in my opinion, or it was just too confusing, or I don't know, sometimes I wanted us to just get back to the action, get back to the actual plot of the story. I would say that this book was 30% plot, 40% theology, honestly. Maybe not, maybe that's a little harsh. Okay, 30% plot, 30% theology, 30% just hanging out with the characters, and 10% murder mystery. That's my breakdown for you. So again, if you're looking for a murder mystery, this is really not it. If you're looking for a way to just hang out with characters and hear all of their backstory and all of their theology and all of their discussions, this is the book for you. There was also several chapters that were just spent on the monk's life and telling us all about his life, and I don't know why that mattered. I don't think it did at all. I don't even remember what was said. It didn't matter. We could have cut all of that and it would have been fine. I think that's kind of my full review. I don't really know what else to say. I just thought I really enjoyed it. I did like it, but it was so long and it took me so long to get through, and I listened to it pretty much only at work. There was one day, like in one of my reading vlogs, I was listening to the story, this audiobook, so that'll also tell you how long I was reading it for. It's been like 2 months. It's been so long. But it is a crazy long book. I think I chose Dostoevsky's longest work as my introduction to him, and that was kind of a mistake, but again, I did like it. I'm such a sucker for characters, and I liked the characters enough that I had a fun time with it, and I had a fun time just hanging out with them. If you're not so much into characters, like if that's not your main focus when reading, I think that The Brothers Karamazov would be way more difficult to get through, because you have to really enjoy these characters and enjoy just spending time with them, because that is mainly what you're doing. Anyway, I think I got a synopsis in there somewhere well enough, so I'm gonna call it here for this video before I just ramble on more about the story, but yeah, that's about the best I can do as a review for The Brothers Karamazov. Thank you so much for watching. If you have made it this far and you like the video, then please give it a thumbs up and subscribe down below if you're not subscribed. And let me know if you have read any Russian novels. Like, have you read Tolstoy? Have you read Dostoevsky? Do you have any recommendations that are maybe not as lengthy as The Brothers Karamazov? I'm definitely going to be giving Dostoevsky more of a try. Well, my brother has an entire collection on audiobook, so I'm just going to be working my way through that little by little. I might switch it up for something else right now. I might take a break from Dostoevsky before I jump into another Russian novel. But it was not a bad introduction, I will say. I had enough fun with it that I'm not too scared to try another one, but I just need a break. It's been so long just listening to Dostoevsky. Anyway, I'm officially calling it here for the video, so I will see you in the next one. Have a blessed day, everybody. Bye-bye.